today are being pulled in every direction. You're expected to be tech savvy, ESG conscious, commercially sharp, and a strong leader, all while keeping the finance function running smoothly and ensuring the business stays ahead of growing regulatory demands. In our recent survey of over 500 UK-based CFOs, we explored the priorities, trade-offs, and tensions shaping the year ahead, from balancing AI with human judgment to driving transformation at pace without burning out your team. I'm Sarah Hughes, and I lead the CFO Solutions financial reporting team at Grant Thornton. And I'm joined by two brilliant finance leaders to unpack the key topics that emerged from the survey and explore what they really mean for CFOs on the ground. I'm joined by Anna Wang, CFO of JCDecaux UK and previously Global Finance Director at Lego Group, and Chris Stefani, Grant Thornton's CFO, who recently joined us after a decade as CFO at DWF Group. Okay, let's get started. So Chris, Anna, 94% of CFOs agree that achieving a healthy level of tension in the boardroom and C-suite is essential for well-informed decision-making. But only 46% say it exists in their business now. There's either too much challenge or too little. From your experience, how can CFOs strengthen their influence in these discussions, ensuring finance is heard and the right level of challenge is applied to decision-making? So Anna, over to you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we all see that in the day in and day out. Actually, we had a board meeting last week, and that's a lot of topics. Actually, I can see benefit a lot from finance being part of it. And I think how we did that was really first align some of the project objectives across the board. Because, for example, we have one of the objectives, which is a sustainable business growth, which means having the profitable, good cash for the business future investment and growth, which once we have this alignment, which is set a really good foundation for everybody to work towards the same goal. But obviously everybody also have their own priorities. So I think another point for me is really to understand all the key stakeholders' priorities, their agenda, and from there, I think you will be able to speak the business lingo with the data and the context and what does it mean and the so what. I think those are really help to, be more challenging, but also collaborative versus a no-no function as finance. Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Chris?
Some great points there. One of the things I think is really bang on is that sort of what's on the agenda. The agenda is clearer if you've got a clear strategy, and that sounds obvious, but that's one of the ways in which you can avoid misalignment. Like, you actually know what you're going to do and what the plan is, and you can spot quite easily if you've got something that's too oblique or too much of a tangent to that. The other thing is, I truly believe that if you're afraid to or restricted from disagreeing with your board, you're in the wrong job. That said, I know better than to throw my boss under the bus on the board as well. So generally speaking, I would say you already know that you're going to have a debate when you go into the boardroom because you've primed people for it in advance. And I think that way, and as long as you turn up with some data-driven insights as well, you can have a healthy discussion and actually get alignment and make the right decision.
Thanks, Chris. Some really useful insight there. So according to our survey, the tension CFOs expect to be the most challenging to navigate in their business over the next 12 months is speed of decision-making versus accuracy of forecasting, with improving forecasting ranking as a top priority. What do you think is holding finance teams back from having real confidence in their forecasting capabilities now? And why is this such a high priority to improve? Anna, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think in my experience, because the world is very uncertain, we all know the VOCA world, and because of that, the forecasting seems to be really important for people to try to navigate in the uncertainty. But really, what we think is really useful is actually to have more scenario planning, because with a different scenario of whether it's going to be very pessimistic or optimistic, what could that look like? And if, for example, we're doing a bid, and if we use a scenario for stress testing, I think it will really help to make a decision. I think another very important thing is for finance to be fully embedded in the business. So then the forecasting is no longer a paper exercise on Excel, for example, but it becomes a really real life where we have all the business input of what's happening in the commercial world, in the technical world, in order to have a much more informed forecasting. I think that should really help also speak the right language and to have a better decision making from that. So I don't think it's nothing is going to be accurate. It's more whether you have thought about all the scenarios and what would happen and so what from there, really.
I love your point about accuracy. I think if ever there was anything true about forecasting, it's that a forecast should be directionally correct and precisely wrong. It always will be. And I think one of the things that potentially holds a finance function back is we've all been trained in different routes to get to where we are, and not everyone's been given permission to think in a top-down way. Sometimes people get too caught up in the bottom-up, the granular, I've got to make it right. And you can't make it right. You've got to set a direction, explain your basis of preparation, allow yourself multiple scenarios. And I think there is probably a finance discipline of, does it pass the step back and squint test? You've not built it up with 26 tabs in an Excel. It's one tab and it's a little bit of instinct applied as well. And as long as you kind of hold that up against what the business is trying to do, you'll actually get a pretty good answer. And I think making a decision based on a forecast that's directionally correct is better than sitting and waiting until you get certainty, because certainty doesn't exist.
I like your reference to precisely wrong. So yes, very useful. Data-related challenges ranked in our survey as CFO's top challenge for the year ahead. And nearly half, 49%, said instinct still drives decision-making more than data. Why do you think access to quality, timely data is often such a challenge? And how do you think finance functions can get it right? Anna, what are your thoughts on that?
I think from where we have done, implementing a very modern ERP is a very, very important first step. Previously, we were on a very, very old-fashioned, which is everything is very manual. People spend 80% of the time trying to compile the data versus trying to analyze it, so the business would be like, I don't want to wait, so let me make a decision based on instincts, for example. But with a much better ERP, the data should be much more accessible. So I think investment in a very good ERP is really important. That's number one. Number two is about ensuring there's a good data quality at source from our perspective, that garbage in, garbage out. So we want to educate the business when there's input to the data, it's well governed, it's well quality checked. And I think lastly is probably the skills that in the finance there could be more upgrade of the skills in the data analytics or visualization, etc., which could also, I think, help a lot in bring data more to life and more real time to the business decision making.
Yeah, I mean, data, it's referenced as a challenge everywhere. And I've probably got maybe a controversial view in it, which is data quality is an issue. We've not got a world that had a line drawn where suddenly everybody got disciplined about how you input data into a system. We've got CRMs and other things now that do data scraping, and actually there's quite a lot of automation that happens that gives you a bit of a data lake to interrogate. But if you think about an 80-20 rule to decision making, you don't need the data to be perfect. And I actually get really frustrated when I hear people say, well, we've not got the data, we don't know how. I'm like, what data do we have? Let's have a look. Right, does it tell us something? Actually it does. So it's always better to have accurate data, and I think the systems that we're putting in place are giving us that, almost sort of taking the human out of the equation, because behavioural issues cause data to go into the system badly very often, but it just doesn't need to be perfect. So take the data you've got, apply some logic and instinct, and you'll still get an actionable insight.
Thank you both, and it's no surprise that investment in systems is important on both of your agendas. For a lot of finance functions, there's a growing people challenge relating to transformation initiatives. Our survey shows that while 98% of CFOs have a transformation program planned or in the midst of one, many are seeing signs of change fatigue. Looking to the year ahead, how do you think CFOs can keep their teams engaged and motivated during periods of intense change?
We actually just finished the big transformation of a ERP implementation, and it is, I think that it was very, very hard work for 18 months. And there were quite a long period where the team are, in a dark place where nothing works in the new system. And now I think I think the key for that is everybody work together, right? So the leaders help try to post an invoice, for example. That helps the AP team to actually build the confidence I can use the new system well. So I think being there for the team when there's difficulty during these changes is super, super important. And also it's about celebrating the wins all the time. And we had a finance summit where we used the Pictionary to celebrate what's the benefits of the new system. Then people would guess based on drawings, a bank statement, what does it mean with the new system? What's the benefit? So it's like bringing the celebration spirit when it's having milestone success, and being there with the team when there's difficulty. I think it's really important in these big changes. And whatever, because every year going to be new transformation agenda, every year will be new initiatives. So I think those two would be the same, whatever we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think that there's lots of stuff in there that I would agree with, so I won't repeat it. I think the other thing though is that whatever the pace of change we're feeling right now, it's probably only going to get faster from here. And so I think we have to be really upfront with our teams that we're in a just constantly evolving environment, so we have to not be afraid of it. I think our teams have to look to us to sort of, to say, is it okay? And we need to be like, it's fine. The change is fine, don't be afraid. I think when it comes to transformation in finance, people often think, oh, offshoring, loss of jobs, and so on and so forth, or automation. I think what we just have to do is, again, be honest with our people about how the world changes. Ultimately, like whenever change happens, new jobs are created, new tasks that didn't exist before are created, and fundamentally you give people a better employment experience. So supporting our teams, being honest about the pace of change, but then also highlighting the opportunity that it brings.
I think it's really good to hear about that honesty, but also celebrating the successes. And I think I'll be taking that Pictionary idea away with me to use on my team. The CFOs we surveyed selected understanding the risks and opportunities of AI as a top strategic priority for the next 12 months. And 29% said they expect AI and human judgment to be a key tension in their boardroom next year. How have you approached using AI in your finance functions? And more broadly, what role do you think CFOs can play in AI strategy as non-tech experts? Anna, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think building on actually what Chris was saying, that it is a tool, but the human judgment is still very important. And for me, people shouldn't be worried about losing jobs to AI, but should be thinking about how they can leverage AI to make the day-to-day easier. It can be automating the repetitive tasks, or it can make very administrative workload much easier. So I think that's the message that I've been giving also to the team, because there's a lot of worry. But I think that's number one. Number two is that we then have a lot of AI champions in the team. So for me, it's everybody needs to have an open mind about it. And it's instead of a top-down approach, we rather have a more of a grassroots approach where everybody will try a different solution to discuss the pros and cons about the different solutions for the finance side of things. And then we can come together and say, what is the good solution for us? Like, it's a journey for us. We haven't gone to the point where, okay, we know exactly what to do for AI, but it's about test and learn, starting small, and then having actually the team to try it out. It helps a lot also to relieve some of the stress and the fear, and it will be much better when we actually adopt broadly for the team. And I think lastly is really working with the IT team on the total company AI adoption, because when it comes to artificial intelligence, there's always risk. We all know they hallucinate. So from a finance perspective, where I think governance is super important, using it with caution is super important, because if AI produce something that's just completely wrong, we still need that human judgment, and we don't want them to steer the wrong decision.
I think, Anna, your point about don't do it top down, this is a real live example. So I was at a presentation yesterday from an AI provider, and they started saying the demographic as to who uses AI and how they use it is a really strange dynamic, because those people who are very senior, read it that old, might use it in a different way than their teams who are less afraid of it, more used to using it in outside of work. And I think, what I heard there was, Chris, you're a dinosaur, but I like to think I'm not. I'm very into AI and technology, but I think the best way to get good ideas and use cases is to go right throughout your team and allow the people who are doing the tasks that need to be automated to come up with smart ideas, because actually that will bring them up into more interesting work. So I think turning it on its head and not thinking, I'm the CFO, I've got to work out how to make AI a part of the function. It's your team, how are we going to do this?
And by bringing your team along, hopefully that will alleviate some of the fears that you were talking about, Anna, when you were speaking. CFOs tell us they expect that their finance function will need to invest more time and resource across a lot of areas next year. ESG reporting, improving forecasting, implementing automation tools, and more. But time, resources, and budget are all finite, so CFOs can't hire indefinitely to meet this growing need. What do you think this means for how finance teams will need to be structured and how they operate in the future? Anna?
I think it's actually quite a good continuation from the AI discussion, because if, for example, the team should be structured that they can have a scale. If the business scale, they should not need to continue to add more people to support the scale. It's rather have a really good system, which we talk about ERP. Number two is really how to use AI smartly to handle a lot of the very heavy lifting data administrative tasks. And I think to do that, people would then need to upskill. Everybody need to upskill, and as well as have a mindset where, to I think Chris' previous point, it's nothing need to be so accurate. It's more what's needed to make a decision versus, oh my God, what do I have to produce to help the business? I think when it comes to the business growth, then we need to take on more responsibility. Those are really important to think about, is to upgrade the capabilities and changing the mindset, and also continue to invest in the automation, which will be able to scale without adding a lot of resources.
Yeah, look, I don't have much to add to that really, but all I would say is giving people permission and encouragement to have an automation mindset, because there's so much demand. I don't think AI is about loss of jobs or anything like that. I think it's about different jobs, more value add jobs. And I also just the point about things not having to be perfect. Perfection is the enemy of good, as they say, and good is often good enough for what we need in terms of decision making.
We've spoken a lot about innovative tech and exciting new opportunities, AI, automation, transformation, but of course there's a flip side to that. Another challenge that's becoming more prominent is innovation versus regulation. How do you think CFOs can strike the right balance in 2026, enabling innovation while staying on top of increasingly complex compliance requirements? Anna?
Yeah, and actually our industry is not that regulated. So from our innovation agenda perspective, it's about the speed of trading for it's out-of-home media industry. So it's the speed of trading, because if we innovate, and there could be more, let's say, credit risk. So I think finance would then need to be smart about how do we mitigate that in a very speedy way. And that's something that we, for example, instead of doing credit check, we have people pay with credit card. And then that could speed up the trading. So I think it's a lot of it is how to evolve with the technology because of the speed the business need to evolve at, then I think we just need to be more speedy, but in a smart way to make it more still compliance, but not slowing the business down.
So yeah, both the roles I've had, one was CFO of a law firm, now CFO of Grant Thornton, heavily regulated depending on the offering that we're talking about. I think it's sort of infused in these businesses though already. You have a chief risk officer, or as we had at DWF, or you've got a pretty significant investment in risk management already, and I think actually making sure that you collaborate and cooperate with your risk function so that you find the right way through, as opposed to the CFO becoming almost like a duplicate of the risk function. So I think we need to be guided by and actually work in conjunction with risk compliance and excellence, and you'll get to the right answer. I actually don't see that as a huge millstone on decision making or agility in business.
We've covered a lot of topics today. If you both had to wrap things up with one key prediction or top tip about the year ahead, what would it be? Anna, what do you think?
I think it's about learning, keep learning with whatever the business change or whatever how the world is evolving, just keep learning, or new skills or new technology, etc. I think just keep learning would be my top tip for having a success in many, many years to go.
Yeah, I think all I would add to that, my best piece of advice to any CFO or finance professional, with AI, with data swirling around you, with lots of different competing priorities, you'll never be badly served if you always have your own model. And by that I mean an old-fashioned spreadsheet with a top-down view of what you can expect to be delivered in your management accounts and your KPIs. Because if you've got an instinct for what you're expecting, you'll spot an error quicker. So even though my team hate it when I do a spreadsheet, and I don't do very many of them, I've always got one spreadsheet, and that's my own model, and it's never let me down.
Thank you, Chris, for that insight. And thank you both for joining me today, sharing some really useful hints and tips and insight. And thank you for joining us for this conversation about what's on the CFO's agenda for the year ahead. Thank you for listening.